Welcome to the World Puja program with Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm your guest host, Kosta Makreas, and I will be having a fascinating conversation with three members of Dr. Greer's senior staff. We'll talk about their experiences for many years in the field, making dramatic contact with ET civilizations. First of all, I want to thank the folks at World Puja for hosting us. They've been very generous throughout the years, and we enjoy continuing this relationship and working with them. Thank you, World Puja. So that you may know a little bit more about me as your guest host, since 2006, I've been working closely as a volunteer with Dr. Greer and his staff to promote and support the work of CSETI. I currently facilitate the Global CE5 ET Contact Monthly events, which are an ongoing collaboration of nearly 100 CSETI teams from more than 20 countries who are making exciting, groundbreaking, and regular contact with ET civilizations. This is a really wonderful effort. And these monthly interactions are made possible and owe their thanks to the tremendous work Dr. Greer and CSETI have done for more than 2 decades. Before we proceed with our discussion, I have a few announcements that are CSETI related. In general, for more information about Dr. Greer, CSETI, and disclosure, you can go to www.disclosureproject.org. That's one word, disclosureproject.org, and www.cseti.org. You'll find a lot of material there that will get you started and just amaze you. Also, it's worth noting that CSETI has an iPhone app now that can be used for ET contact. If you go to cseti.org and click on the left sidebar on the link that says ET Contact Tool, you'll be taken to a description of the app, and you'll be able to order it from the App Store. This app is a wonderful tool. I know I've used it in the field, as have others, to make contact, and has a lot of amazing features and information in it. So I recommend that people check that out. Finally, CSETI has some ambassador trainings that are coming up. The nearest one is July 24th through July 31st. That's in Wiltshire, England, and that involves the training at Stonehenge. Also, following that, August 21st to August 27th, the training is at Mount Shasta, California, and October 23rd to October 29th in the Southern California desert near Palm Springs will be another Ambassador to the Universe training. For information on these, more detailed information, you can again go to cseti.org and click on the link that says Ambassador Trainings. So now we're ready to be introduced to our guests. We have 3 members of Dr. Greer's senior staff with us. First of all, we have Trudy Guyker, who's a wife and grandmother who's been with CSETI for 17 years and has been to at least 60 Ambassador to the Universe trainings and other events. Along the way, she's helped train at least 1,500 people. Welcome, Trudy.
Thank you.
And Dr. Raven Nabulsi has been involved with CSETI since 1998 and is a senior member of the team and has also attended many Ambassador to the Universe trainings. Welcome, Raven.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. And Charlie Balogh is a professional musician near Phoenix, Arizona. He's been a member of CSETI for over 10 years, having worked in collaboration with Dr. Greer on several projects, including the Cosmic Consciousness CD, and has spent time analyzing many of the unusual sounds that are recorded during CSETI trainings. Welcome, Charlie. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
And in general, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining in. I think we'll have a wonderful conversation based on your many years of experience in the field. And I'm sure our listeners might be thinking of all kinds of questions that revolve around, what is it like to do trainings? How did you get interested in this? What are some of the most fascinating trainings, et cetera? We'll try to explore a lot of that and educate people and hopefully get you interested in doing CSETI work yourself. First of all, I'd like to address this to Raven, and I'll talk to each of our guests here and ask them the same question, and that is, just in general, how did you get involved in CSETI? How did you find CSETI? How did it interest you?
Well, what happened is Dr. Greer was actually speaking at a u.f.o event in my hometown, and I went along with some friends that highly recommended I listen to what this man had to say because they had heard him on the Art Bell show and Coast to Coast. So I went, and I've always been interested in the subject, but I wasn't too interested in a lot of the materials that were out there. But when I heard him speaking, I really felt that he was onto something, and there was a lot of integrity there. So little did I know, though, he was mentioning that there was going to be an upcoming training in Sedona, Arizona that year. One of the people I went with actually secretly signed me up for the training. So I, I was a little kind of reluctant because I didn't know, who any of these people were or anything else. But when I went there, actually one of the first people I met was Trudy, and she seemed like a pretty normal person to me. So I got to know some of the people that had been coming, and we had just amazing events happen all week, and that was it for me. I was hooked after that.
And what year was that?
That was November of '98.
Okay, yeah. So you've stuck with this for more than a decade. That's really
yes.
profound. And you, Trudy, what is your story of finding CSETI?
Well, in 1993, I went to a Whole Life Expo in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I went to a workshop and a lecture given by CSETI, and I was so impressed with the integrity of the speaker that I was wowed, and I was so thrilled about how CSETI involves the spiritual aspect of life and reality. And since I had a real strong spiritual background and had a lifetime interest in ETs, I thought, wow, it just everything dovetailed, and thought, well, this is where I can use my spiritual knowledge and working with establishing contact with ET. And so
that's fascinating. Everybody has their own unique perspective and the place where they are as they find CSETI, and so it hits them in a different way. And then once they find themselves, I believe, getting interested, they just suddenly realize that many of them, that hey, I'm in this for a longer haul than I would have thought. This is just profound.
Yeah.
And you, Charlie, what is your background and your story in finding CSETI?
Well, I had always been interested in mainly astronomy up until I met Dr. Greer. I had taken astronomy courses in college, and although I'm a musician now, if I had been pushed in the right direction, I probably would have ended up on a lonely mountaintop somewhere in an observatory as sort of a hermit, living a hermit existence. But I happened to go to a prophets conference here in Phoenix. I think it was either 1999 or 2000. I'm not quite sure of the year, but it was in the fall of one of those years. And Dr. Greer was there. But I have to be honest and say he wasn't my primary reason for going. I had found out that Ed Mitchell was going to be with him, the Apollo astronaut. So my initial interest was with Ed Mitchell. And then I heard Steve give his presentation, and it just knocked me over. It was the first time I had heard anybody talk about the subject of ETs and extraterrestrial life from such a place of deep knowing, from deep knowledge and conviction. And all the material I had been exposed to up until then was through the movies and through various media and everything. But I had never heard anybody speak that way with that level of knowledge about the subject. And I knew from that point on that I had to find out more. And so a few months later, I joined CSETI, and I went to my first training in Joshua Tree in 2001. And that, I have to say also that, you know, I've been involved for over 10 years now, but I credit Dr. Greer with a complete transformation of my whole outlook on life through the spiritual aspects of this whole phenomenon. And because I'm not the same person I was 10 or 15 years ago. And I have to credit Dr. Greer with that. So I've had some extraordinary experiences over these last years, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, that's wonderful. And as I heard you talking and just was putting it together with the comments made by Raven and Trudy, and I find myself using the word profound over and over, but I just suddenly realized again how profound that experience has been, because in talking to many people who've also found CSETI one way or another, the words life-changing, profound, and others, you know, similar kind of adjectives do come up. They walk away with just that deeper appreciation that they never knew was possible. I also want to say that as far as astronaut Ed Mitchell, he's had an association with Dr. Greer for a number of years, from what I understand, and has even publicly credited Dr. Greer with being the father of disclosure, and has acknowledged him for the work that he's done over the years to bring this topic to the attention of the worldwide public. So it's wonderful to know that some of the stature of Edgar Mitchell too has appreciated the work that Dr. Greer has started and has maintained over the years, and has worked with him in Washington. I also wanted to put in here my own experience, which if you take the average of yours, divide by 3 and something, you'll come up with the pieces that are very similar. For me, I was web surfing for the u.f.o words in 2006, if I recall, just trying to see what I could find on the topic, because I had a childhood fascination with UFOs. That's what I called them back in those days, because they were still unidentified. For me, not so much now. They're more identified, but back then I was seeing a lot of information, and then lo and behold, I found the disclosureproject.org, and I have to say I was blown away. Like Trudy said, I had never seen anybody put this in the whole topic in a spiritual kind of framework, and that appealed to me because I had a background in meditation and spirituality, and Dr. Greer was really such a synthesis of that with the extraterrestrial topic. And also he was a synthesis of political, social, economic type of information that I had never seen anyone else put together before in one package and related to the ET topic. So I was just struck by all that and have stayed with it ever since, like all of you have. So everyone's got a story. Moving along here now, since many of us became involved, we found ourselves going to ambassador trainings or to conferences or to workshops, particularly the ambassador trainings, which are a week-long time span in different locations around mostly the United States, but some in England and one in France recently. And they involve going out in the field and making the contact through the various means and using the CE5 protocols, the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols that Dr. Greer invented. And we have found ourselves outside, many of us sitting there for hours in inclement and nice conditions, variously, having many experiences. So what I want to explore right now is the question of what were some of your most meaningful experiences during your CSETI field work. And I know they might be hard to pick some of those out, but I know that you all have had some that really do stand out. So, Raven, how about you? What are the standouts in your experience?
Well, I have to say that actually the first trip that I ever went on, the one to Sedona, at the very end of that week, I made a connection with an ET that I had been in contact with as a child, but it's a long story, but I had never actually seen him in like a physical type of form. It was always just like a light that I would see. And I had this sort of amazing meditation where I actually saw him in his form, and I was on board his ship, and I was told that I could actually fly the ship by putting my hand in this little hand plate and you basically think about where you want to go, and the ship will be propelled there. So that was like kind of an amazing thing to me, and I could actually feel that I was in my chair, but I was also on the ship at the same time. It was clearly this whole thing of, being bilocated I had never experienced before. And then I thought, my mind was still thinking, this, I'm imagining all this and this and that. So I told him, if you're in the area and you can do this, could you please, let me know that you're really there. So anyway, I kind of felt myself then be fully back in my chair. And when it was time for us to sort of share our experiences after the meditation, I told everybody what had happened, and then there was actually like a flashing craft that was above us for a short period of time after that. And, every time I'd think and ask him, can you flash again, it would happen again. So I really felt that, I had really made contact with this being. So that was, one of the big ones. And then a few years ago in Joshua Tree, we were all having quite a number of experiences, and the whole group was at the time, and we had heard some voices that were non-human, and we had seen flashes of light in the field. And as we were coming back to our chairs, there were still a lot of people out in the field, but I decided to settle back into my seat. And one thing I do is sometimes just randomly take photographs, and I captured what, we have come to believe was actually one of the ET beings that we had been hearing the voice of. So that was another big one for me.
That's amazing, and I understand from that experience that particular picture has been published on the CSETI website.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's wonderful, because one of the things is being able to share from these trainings, not only stories, but videos and still shots, sound recordings that we bring back, and being able to share them with other people who haven't been there before, or with the general public when they can make it on the CSETI website. I wanted to ask you a question. That the first thing that crossed my mind is the delicious thought in your first narrative there of being told you're able to go anywhere you want just by putting your hand in that little placeholder and thinking about it. What a delicious thought. I mean, you can just imagine if you asked 100 people the list of places that might come up from all of them. Did that even occur to you? Like, oh, this is great. I've always wanted to go to X place, and it's really that easy? Can I do that?
It was kind of interesting because I think because I was conscious of also being, part of the circle back on Earth, I felt like, I had to kind of get back there in a sense, because wherever I was in the meditation, it was outside of the Milky Way galaxy, and I could see this beautiful giant spiral in space that we were looking down upon. So I kind of felt maybe from my first, launch, I better just get back home instead of going all over the place. So I was just thinking of Earth, and the hand plate, interestingly enough, had only 4 spots for 4 fingers. So, I kind of put my ring and my pinky finger in one slot and then the rest in the others, and it fit perfectly, and then, there I went. But I could see us coming through the Milky Way galaxy and then slowly passing the planets and then eventually come back to Earth. So, but yeah, at the time I never thought, wow, I could go wherever I went. So
suddenly a trip to Hawaii seems so pedestrian, right? When you're out there looking at the Milky Way, right?
Exactly.
Go anywhere, it's like, oh, maybe I better think bigger picture here. But that's fascinating detail. And you, Charlie, then, how about some of your most meaningful experiences during trainings?
Well, you mentioned the profound nature of what takes place during these trainings. I can say without hesitation that nearly every experience that I've had has been profound on some level. But I think probably the most the greatest impression that was made on me was during those first few trainings that I attended, and I've spoken about this with Dr. Greer on a previous program about a vision I had during a morning meditation at that first training I went to in 2001. And it was a vision of the CSETI logo, the three globes connected by straight lines. And in my vision, it was three-dimensional, and I was looking up in the sky, and I saw the three globes very large. It almost looked like a spacecraft, and it was in my recollection it was maybe 120 feet on a side, and it was rotating in the air in front of me. And as each of the globes passed by me, there was a specific set of lights within the globes and a specific sound, and it was a very musical sound, and it was so incredible. I never expected to experience anything like that. My intention of going to the training was, hopefully, I'm going to meet E.T. or I'm going to see an actual spacecraft. And this happened it was only really the second or third morning during a morning meditation before everybody got together. And it was almost like a lucid dream, but I realized that I wasn't dreaming. I was just sitting in my chair in the hotel room. And the sound and the music that I heard was very memorable. And what was frustrating at the time is that I had to remember everything. I didn't have a keyboard in front of me to try and recreate the sound that I heard. So I had to jot down quick little notes after I came out of the meditation. And I was terribly excited when we met for that afternoon. I told Steve about it, and I left the training, and as soon as I walked into the house, I had to sit down to the keyboard and recreate what I heard. And since that time, we've used that music on several occasions. It's become, for a lot of people, it's become sort of almost like a meditation sequence when they listen to it. And it's of course, we've had it on some of our recordings available through the website, and the logo that you see on the website is an actual artist's interpretation of what I saw that morning. There's one other experience, real quick. I won't take too much time. That of experiencing a remote view of a facility in Crestone, Colorado, the following year, 3 weeks before the training in June in Crestone, Colorado. I just as an experiment, I sat down in a chair and meditated and suggested to myself just the word Crestone, because I wanted to see if I could actually see any structures there or landmarks that I could corroborate when I arrived there 3 weeks later. And what had happened was I had actually seen a beautiful meditation dome that's built as part of a Zen Buddhist retreat there on the side of the mountains above Crestone. And I had seen it in great detail. I told Debbie Foch about it, the CSETI coordinator, about 3 weeks ahead of time. And she laughed on the other end. She says, "You're going to be very surprised." And I went to Crestone and saw exactly what I had seen in the remote view. This is something I had never, ever done before. And the experience was so not unnerving, but just so profound, and it got my adrenaline pumping that I literally broke down in tears. It was such a shock that I was able to do something like that. Not only had I remote viewed the actual facility, I had actually remote viewed it in the future at the point that I was going to be there, because there were some decorations and things in the dome that weren't normally there. They were only there at the time that I was going to be there. And that was probably the most gut-wrenching. It was a wake-up call, a very profound wake-up call that all this is possible.
I see.
Just amazing.
Well, what strikes me about all of your stories and experiences I've had too is that when you're on these trainings with Dr. Greer, or when you're doing your own CSETI work, say in your backyard or in your locality, there's that meditative spiritual component that isn't there with other types of UFO, what's called UFO work, what we call it extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI. And what I mean by that is there's always the aspect of what you see in the sky or around you, and many people love that. I'm one of them, being able to sight and then follow objects and communicate with them. But there's also that other component that's really special about the trainings that we've all been on, and that's the inner experience, where you're meditating with either you're by yourself or with a group of people, and getting into that what Dr. Greer calls the CTS, the coherent thought sequencing, the group mind, just like a laser, where all the wavelengths of light just become a single wavelength and are coherent. Then, so everyone in the circle puts out thought in that same way, and that is something that the extraterrestrial intelligence can kind of home in on very easily, and I think that thrills them. And so that component of the experience is something that I believe is really the core of the experience, and the rest of the stuff in the sky is just is an addition and an embellishment. But the spiritual contact, I find people coming back to over and over and wanting to repeat. So they continue, meditating and sticking with the group to make contact that way, and it does work, as you all know.
Kostas, I think you skipped me.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Well, that means that I need to circle back. This is Trudy, and I apologize for that.
That's quite right. But what I have to say, it kind of fits right in with what you just said.
Oh,
so,
maybe I read your mind.
Probably so.
Go ahead. Meaningful experiences. Everybody's got them. I'm listening.
Okay. This happened in 2007, the night of the Orion transmissions, and several. That morning, I had in my prayer, I had asked Spirit to. I prayed that I could be a vessel to be used in any way Spirit wanted. That was my prayer. And then we were, before we went out to do field work that night, it was mainly a group of mainly senior people that were there, and we went and we did a meditation at Joshua Tree, and it was one of the most beautiful and strongest meditations, group meditations I've ever experienced. It was amazing. So we were truly united as one, and filled, and there was such a powerful feeling of love. And Raven was there, and before we had come into the site where we were going to do this meditation, several people heard the sounds of drums, Indian drumming, and then when we sat down, and just before we went into this meditation, I felt the presence of three people they were standing by me, and I kind of had the feeling that they were Native American. And so we did the meditation, and during the meditation, Raven, afterwards, Raven said that she had seen 3 blue orbs near my heart, and that they entered me. And
right.
Pardon?
I was saying right. I remember that.
Yeah, and it was so neat that you're the one that saw them. It's so cool. So afterwards, I felt that it was the 3 Native American spirits that were there that entered me through these blue orbs. They entered me. And the reason that they entered me was because they wanted to see the Orion transmission event happen, because they knew it was going to happen, and they wanted to see it, and they wanted to hear it, and they wanted to experience the emotion of it, and that's why they came into me, so that they were in me when the small group, went to the field site for the night work, and then toward the end of the evening, then is when the Orion's transmissions occurred, and these people were using my eyes and ears and my heart and my emotions in order to see and experience and be there when this incredible event happened, because for them, what they were witnessing and feeling and seeing was the return of their ancestors, the return of the star people. So that was profound, to say the least. Also, on a different tone, one of the most memorable experiences happened in Outer Banks a few years back. And I had seen in a remote view in the morning, I had seen a small craft, ET craft, maybe no more than 10, 15 feet in diameter, offshore, and in water where the water got, suddenly drops and gets really deep. And I saw this craft there in the water, just off the shore of where we were going to be that night. So that night we went out, and sometime during the night, several hours into the night, all of a sudden this plane came around from in front of us, off in the distance, circled around to the right, and then came really low to the beach, and it shone a spotlight right on that spot where I had seen, and just lit up that whole, that spot, just the water there, right off the shore. Then it left, and it circled around, came back real low, and shone the light again on that spot, then took off. So that for me, that was pretty darn profound. It was because it just really strengthened my confidence in myself and in my remote viewing ability.
That is unusual for a plane to do that, but you're right. It's a validation for remote viewing, because they independently, whoever was in that plane, sensed, saw, measured something, and went to that.
That's right. They were looking for something that was in that water.
They were looking, yeah. And yeah, we could speculate all evening about what that might have been, but that would distract us really from telling our most profound stories
right
here. And I think that possibly the next question I was going to ask you is related to the question we just talked about, which was our most meaningful experiences, and that is our most unusual experiences. Now, there's a little bit of a different flavor there. If there's anything that can be said to be usual about any of these experiences, then somehow we might need to come up with something that's unusual. I certainly have a story to tell along those lines. It was something that I didn't expect, and I'll relate that so that you kind of can get an idea of what I'm after here, and that is that going to some of the trainings, my attention has always been pretty much skyward because I so enjoy watching the sky phenomena, the ships, the starcraft that do come there and do interact with us, that it caught me quite by surprise during one of the meditation periods at one of the trainings, where I got a very firm, I won't even say it was a touch because it was a shove, but not a painful one, on my shoulder, you know, something that you cannot mistake. And when I would turn around and look, of course, there was no one behind me. And then I would feel a shove on my knee. Just something physical to, I believe, let me know that other types of contact were possible for me, and that I could pay attention in other ways through other of my senses or other areas of the environment rather than just the sky. And this goes back to what Dr. Greer has often said, which is that the ETs have, you know, thousands of ways that they can communicate safely to them and to us with us. And if we focus on just one way, well, we might be missing a myriad of other means of communication. And that was certainly true in my case with that story. So for me, that was an unusual experience. It was out of the framework of how I expected contact to happen, but now it's happened since then, and other things have happened. So my repertoire, you might say, has become more usual, having been built from unusual things that come and then just become part of my normal expectation now. So having said that, for you, we'll start with you, Raven. In the realm of the unusual, what do you think stands out as having been that?
You know, it's difficult, like you said, because there's just, you know, it can all be construed as unusual. But I would have to say something that really struck me was at one of the events, one of the ambassador trainings, I had a meditation, and I've noticed that often, you know, with each subsequent training, there's sort of like new ETs that I kind of feel like I'm being introduced to, like different species. They, you know, look different and everything else. And this particular time in my meditation, I met these beings that really had an unusual look. I had never seen anything like it before, and they were just stark white, and there was a strange little sort of point is the way their head came to a little nodule, like on the top of their head. And they had these very large blue eyes, but they were very sort of meek and quiet. And somebody else during that meditation encountered the same being. So I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. So there was, you know, some corroboration that way. And that's one thing that I always find really fascinating is when other people, you know, within our group end up having like a very similar experience or meeting the same entity that way. So I think that really kind of stands out to me. And I'm trying to think. I know another time, I think Trudy and I both saw a very large ant-like ET that was walking around our circle and just kind of stopping in front of each person and sort of looking at them and kind of, you know, maybe exchanging, you know, we were exchanging some sort of information, but she and I both saw it, and that was another time, you know, again, where there was some corroboration of what I was seeing.
That's amazing. That's really heartening.
I would just like to make a comment about what Raven just said, because that was really cool. And when I saw like black legs in the circle. And then later on, I saw a black ant head. And then Raven said that she saw the whole person together. So it was interesting phenomena that happened there.
Yeah, I should say. And as for you, Trudy, did you have any other unusual experiences in addition to that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, I'm like Raven. There's just everything could be said it's unusual, but anymore it's not so unusual. It's very usual. One of the most amazing things that happened to me happened in 1998 at Joshua Tree, and we were sitting in circle near some cliffs, some high rocks and everything, and right above me there was this pinon tree that was sticking out, and all of a sudden this thing just started shaking like crazy. It was just amazing, and I was right underneath it, and I looked up and I could see into the tree. There was nobody there. There was no reason for that tree to be shaking like that. It was shaking violently. That was amazing. And let's see. One of the ways that ET will communicate will be through sound. And one time at the Outer Banks, I was in my bedroom in the house the group was staying in, and I heard twice very two ping, like real high pitch sound, like high, really good crystal when you tap it, and it makes a really tinging sound. And it did it, and I went and looked on my dresser, and there was nothing there for it to do that. And then I walked back a little bit later, and it did it again, twice. Well, at the same time, in another bedroom in the house, Todd and Jack were doing some electronic work or something or other. They were doing stuff there. And they heard electronic sounds there was no explanation for them. So those two things happened at the same time, and they did it for me with this high pinging sound because I had heard that before, and they were just letting me know it was them, and then in the high pinging sound, and then Todd and Jack, they're two really electronic guys, and so the ETs used the electronic sounds for them to let them know because that's where their mind was at the time.
It's amazing how we do get our own customized experiences. People sitting in a group of 10 next to each other can have 10 different ways that are unique to each of them and that are within their range of perception with which they can be contacted. And everybody, and like you have said, Raven and Trudy, it's really cool when one or more people can validate what you've seen because it's just a wonderful sharing experience that way. It's a real bonding experience.
Yeah. I just add one more little story here because it has to do with the puja. And during a puja one time, after I acknowledged the teachers, all of a sudden I found myself in space, and the entire group was there with me. And I saw a birthday cake, and each one of us was a candle in the cake.
Wow.
And it was a sense of a great celebration. But I thought that was very nice since it was during the puja.
That is amazing. Well, what cosmic birthday? Whose birthday was it?
I have no idea. The universe was celebrating with us.
Okay. Just celebration it doesn't have to be a birthday, just a celebrating. Wow.
Right.
And you, Charlie?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that are real quick that are very indicate the often physicality of contact, and both of these things happened on the same night. This was in Crestone, when we were up on the side of Mountain Blanca at a very unique and active contact site that we have up there. At one point, we had just broken a meditation, and we were about to take a break. And before everybody really started to move around, Dr. Greer brought our attention to a craft that was just the other side of materialization that was not more than maybe 120 feet down the path from where our circle was. And he asked us all to get up and walk toward that area. And as I got up, a good friend of ours, Jan Brooke from Oklahoma, was with me. And we both saw at the same time this curtain of energy. It's very difficult to describe unless you see it, but it looks like just millions and millions of points of sparkling light, of rainbow-colored light. But what was unique about this situation that it was almost like a curtain. And Jan took my hand and physically took my hand, and she said, "Watch this." And she put my hand toward the curtain, and I could actually see my hand disturbing this curtain of energy, like as if you're putting your hand into water. That was extraordinary, and it was very physical. I was seeing it with my physical eyes. The other thing that happened, we went up to this special contact site just above where we normally form our circle, and Steve conducted a very deep meditation up there, and when we were leaving that site and coming back down the mountain, I distinctly smelled the scent of roses, a very strong scent of roses. And in that area, the mountain is just covered with scrub pine, which really doesn't have much of an odor at all. We were out in the cool night air, and there wasn't much of a scent of anything up there, but to smell roses in a place where there should be no flowers at all was extraordinary. And it was a sign of a celestial presence. There's no doubt about that.
Wow.
That's very physical things that you can experience, especially like the aroma and seeing this curtain of energy vacillating in front of you and being able to interact with it. It just defies explanation.
Well, we sometimes, in those trainings, as we reflect back on what we've seen and been a part of and have sensed, I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been on the set of a science fiction movie, but I know it hasn't been. I know it's been real, and I've been there with 20 to 30, 40 people, each of whom many times has also experienced something. And it's just remarkable the great narrative that we can all weave with our separate stories from any given training. We have just a few minutes left, and I had one more question I wanted to explore. So if each of you could just give me a brief answer, we'll be able to do that, and then we'll wind up with our broadcast here. And this is an interesting one. It's like, what is the most challenging thing about this field work for you? I'll start with you again, Raven. What's tough?
That is very easy to answer. It's the cold, cold air sometimes, especially when we've been out in the desert in November. I know one year it was like in the teens at night, and yeah, it was so cold. I know my teeth were chattering the entire evening, and we're usually out 4 or 5 hours, so it was interesting, but it's also worth it. So if I had my choice, though, I'd like to be in a nice, warm, fluffy blanket.
Wouldn't most of us?
Yeah.
Do you find that can a person wear enough warm clothing with sleeping bags, enough layers to make the cold not an issue, do you think?
Well, I had so many layers on I could barely walk, but it still was that. I think that's my biggest challenge.
And that's, again, the P word, a profound challenge, because that's
Yes.
pretty distracting, trying to maintain cosmic consciousness under the stars when your teeth are chattering.
Right.
I'd reiterate that. At my first training in Joshua Tree, I wasn't really prepared, And here we are out in the middle of the desert. It's probably about 40 degrees, and I was out there with a light jacket. And my teeth were chattering, and I'm saying to myself, you expect me to meditate like this? I learned my lesson at that first training, and I've gotten used to it over the years, but I'm very well prepared for it now. There's no doubt about that.
And you, Trudy, what has been most challenging for you?
Well, it's I pride myself on being alert at all times, and but it toward the end of the week, and after being up late so often, and the sleep patterns being disturbed, toward the next to the last and the last night, it's a challenge to stay awake and alert, and I have to really watch it. And I'm getting older now, and so it's not getting any easier. So anyway, so that's my biggest challenge out on the field.
And I have to concur with you there, Trudy. Well, actually, I concur with all three of you. I have two challenges, and one of them is the cold, which at one extreme has me so alert and so awake, but I'm not able to concentrate on and focus on what I want to be doing to meditate. And yet on the other extreme is, again, the tiredness that you mentioned, Trudy, which can come from a lot of factors. But there I am, trying to stay awake. Let's say I'm warm enough at that point, so the cold's not the problem, but I'm so comfortable and warm, and Steve is taking us so deeply into the meditation, and I'm enjoying it, that the danger is that I will fall asleep. And for me, the snoring protocol then has to be invoked, which means I get a jab in the ribs from my wife, who is ever alert next to me.
And don't sit next to me.
What's that?
I said, don't sit next to me. My husband snores, and I'm really good at waking you up.
Well, and thankfully so, because it would be terrible to snore and sleep through an amazing contact. And
the important thing to remember about that,
all of us. So
the important thing to remember about that, though, is that sometimes, very often, even if you are sleeping, you can have a very profound experience while you're sleeping with the group.
Yes.
And that's happened several times as well.
Well, Steve has said that, correct me if I'm wrong, that I think one of the most common ways the ETs can make contact with us is through our dreams.
Exactly.
So,
right.
So you're absolutely right. Falling asleep, I guess, as long as you're not loud and disturbing everyone around you, can be like an open door for them to enter in your dreams, or
sure.
Like several of you have mentioned earlier, take you into kind of a bilocated experience there, which you can bring back the memory of. So I guess sleep isn't such a bad thing, and I know that's recognized when we're in the circle that it can happen to people. Well, we answered some of these questions a little bit more quickly than I thought. I might have time for just actually one more with a brief answer. And this is interesting because I've never heard this asked before, but have you had any ET experiences outside of the context of your CSETI Ambassador to the Universe trainings? I'll start with you, Raven.
Okay. Actually, I have to say, since I was a child, I had a number of experiences. Couple quick examples. My parents used to own a home out near Palm Springs. It was actually near Desert Hot Springs. And one night there was nothing around, and we had been kind of just driving around near sunset, and we stopped the car for a moment because we saw a coyote, and just across the street from us was like sort of an open dirt field, and a light came right up out of the ground and zigzagged up about 100 feet and opened into this beautiful teardrop shape, and it was just this bright fuchsia color and just completely vanished. And around that same time in my life, back at our house in the LA area, we woke up one night and there was actually an orange disc hovering like right over our backyard. So I'm sure they were, communicating with me somehow, but I think I was too little to understand what it all meant. But there's been other things, but I kind of feel it's been following me throughout my life. But it's always just been this beautiful and amazing experience, and so definitely yes.
Yeah, that's great, and I think we have enough time for you, Trudy, there to respond to that as well, outside of the CSETI.
Right. In 1995, in October, I saw. I went to the store to get some milk, and it was about 9:30 at night, and it was kind of rainy, and there was no traffic out there, and I saw a group of 6 slightly dim ruby red lights, and they were kind of not stacked on one another, sets of 3, but kind of slightly off. And it was only about, I would say, a quarter of a mile to half a mile away from me, right in my vision, and growing very, very slowly. It was like this group of lights moving as one. And so it was very low to the ground. And I watched it. I was able to follow it, and it made a horseshoe pattern around the small town I lived in, and then it turned up this highway, and it flew right over a nuclear waste disposal site. Wow. There outside of Los Alamos. And they really wanted me to see them because there was no reason for me to go out at 9:30 at night. Anyway, so that was one, which was pretty amazing. And then also in 1995, I went with my husband to Cape Canaveral, and he was there on business, and we were able to watch a shuttle launch. And so the shuttle went off, and it went into a cloud bank and didn't see it very much. But I took pictures of this contrail that the shuttle left, and when I got home and developed the pictures, there was a ET craft in there.
Wonderful.
And so I found out that the ET craft are often seen at launches.
Wonderful. That's a perfect juxtaposition of the current state of our acknowledged technology with the state of hyperdimensional travel that they represent together. Well, with that, our program concludes, and I want to very much thank Raven, Trudy, and Charlie for joining us and for recounting a lot of these very memorable types of experiences. And I hope you, as our audience, have enjoyed hearing about those. And we'll continue tuning in when Dr. Greer resumes on this program with World Puja. And again, want to thank the folks at World Puja for hosting us and for the 3 of you being here. Until next time, this is Kosta Makreas and signing off.